Welcome to the video where we teach you how to be a man, not some sort of. Did you guys think I was gonna say a bad word there? I don't need to have my shirt off for this. It's okay. Oh, but if you're wondering, flaming cello, growling leopard, wise owl, life's a roll of the die, yin yang with nature. My wife has the same one as that one. Feminist symbol. You guys won't actually believe them unless I show you that one. And I have a little doobie, but I won't tell you where. Now, obviously, I'm very manly for having all of these tattoos, but what is masculinity? Huh? Alright. And in the age of the Andrew Tates and people talking about not talking about what it means to be a man, stepping up leadership with actual good stuff to say, well, I've done the manliest thing of all. I've made some notes for myself so that I don't forget good points that I was going to make. Like some sort of weak... But I wanted to talk about, feel like I have reclaimed masculinity for myself. In the same slosh of patriarchal filth and toxic attitudes that bubbled over as I started expressing myself, but ultimately settled down as I sort of got my political thinking aligned straight. And I feel like I have a great relationship with my sense of masculinity in a non-toxic way, and I wanted to share how I got there and see whether any of it's useful. Now, in my own life, we're going to talk about how I didn't have an absent father or anything like that, but I had, in some ways, a lack of a masculine influence. And so, when it turned out I was pretty masculine and really gravitated towards certain things that can be aggressive, I didn't really know how to tame that very well. And I still enjoy a lot of stereotypically masculine things now that I'm, out there leftist anarchist person. So I don't think it's at odds with progressivism to be masculine. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So let's talk about gender identity for the most underappreciated group of people out there. Straight, white, cis, male dude bros. But like I said, hopefully this conversation is illuminating for anybody. So I'm not the most qualified person to talk about gender theory, but I feel like we have to get a few things out of the way, a few definitions of terms. If we cannot accept these things, it's going to be a lot harder to advance in the conversation. So we're going to get personal in just a second, but I need to lay out a few things that we're going to assume are true throughout this video. Masculinity itself is not toxic. This is a misunderstanding of the term toxic masculinity. A large part of toxic masculinity is what we could call male chauvinism. The assumption that men are better, the preference for men, the preference given to men, just a sort of overall idea that what men do is superior. And related to this idea is the word patriarchy, which is a system of hierarchical advantage to those who are not just male, and what that means presenting socially. Now, while it might be tempting if you're a white dude struggling in the U.S. today to believe that such a patriarchy must not exist because you don't have a very good life, the truth is just worse. The truth is just that the other people's lives are even worse. We're just in a bad state. It's because of capitalism. And if you want to jump on board a real solution for it, keep listening in this video and you're going to learn some things about how to actually fix your downtrodden state. In fact, it's the patriarchal assumptions about men being leaders, financially secure, dominating socially, that's making you feel so insecure about yourself. This is part of the way in which feminists say that patriarchy harms everybody, not just women. And good Lord, there are dozens of examples that I could give just from my married life and seeing the differences in the world that I walk through and the world that my wife walks through, the world we walk through together. The funniest example that I can think of is how I've had dozens of interactions with cops living in a vehicle, and only one time did the cop actually talk to Alexis directly and wanted to make sure that she wasn't being sex trafficked. That only happened once. The rest of the time, there's a male in charge here. I just need to talk to him. I only need to see his ID. I only need to ask him questions. It's just... I know cop is kind of a chauvinist world to begin with, but like people think that the patriarchy doesn't exist, and it's like you don't think that the systemically different treatment of men, a term that actually has its origin in parts of speech, it's a literature term originally, does mean, as applied to human sexuality, something different from biological sex. We have all heard this. The more interesting point that you've only heard all too many times if you're watching the right sort of videos on YouTube, that gender is performative. And you might know the name Judith Butler if you already know good Judith Butler. I'll say it a few more times so you don't forget. Judith Butler, Judith Butler, Judith Butler. Judith Butler wrote a book on gender being a performance. It's cited in like fucking every video about gender and whatever. It is such an integral concept to what we're going to be talking about today. Gender isn't something that you are. It's something that you do. When you are more masculine or more feminine, it's when you take on those traits. That's why trans people aren't making fun of people of the other for presenting more that way. They're using more of those, they're adopting more of those traits. They're performing it. Everybody performs it. Except nobody questions it because I'm cis. So finally, if gender doesn't exist, with clear boundaries at least, how are we to make anything of that at all? You feel strongly about your gender. You probably do. You probably, if you're like a cishead guy who's like never really thought about this before, you probably have thought about how humiliated you'd feel if you were forced to dress, behave, or whatever like a girl. Like a girl is like the fucking Sandlot. You feel something about the gender. It is about feelings. We have feelings. We have strong feelings. So my story. I genuinely kind of felt ambiguously gendered when I was a kid. I didn't fit in at school, and it felt like all the boys at school were into sports, and I wasn't. And I had like curly hair that nobody else at school had. I was very close to my mom and kind of absorbed not just some of her feminine traits, but just like some of her insecurities and stuff. So I often related a lot to girls, and I went through this phase of like putting a tea towel on my head so that I'd have long hair like a girl, and I would just play pretend. You know, I wasn't a trans kid. It's just like I'm a kid, just like playing with different things. So these days, I definitely am like on the gender abolitionist bend where it's just like literally keep gender out of it with kids. Like any gender. Just like they're just kids. Stop. But I stayed pretty soft. Both of my parents, they're academic types. They're kind of soft. They're significantly like under 6 feet, and then me and my brother come out these massive giants, testosterone hormones, and parents who had to deal with that in the same way, so they don't really have the personal experience guidance for like. Now, it's not the worst environment to grow up in when they're already kind of de-emphasizing male chauvinism, although they're religious, so that has its, intrinsic chauvinism regardless, but I digress. This is not a religion video. I just want to talk about why, in my own journey, I was lost for a bit. And I tried to find other masculine role models, someone who could teach me, well, how do you, like, do the confident, take charge thing? And I didn't feel like it was too hard for me to empathize with women. I mean, I was, like, doing it as a kid, right? Like I was saying. And I was generally a very sensitive kid, like animal welfare and human rights and all that stuff. So it wasn't that much of a stretch. I didn't have to be like persuaded that women should be equal. I just still fantasized about controlling them. Certain parts of my development were aided and others delayed by the fact that I was in a long-term relationship from the age of 15 to 20. 5 years at one point, at the end. She was very motivated in school. I mentioned my parents are academics, so it's like, in a lot of ways, she helped keep me on the straight and narrow. I was interested in experimenting with like weed and cigarettes, and she's like, oh, so didn't smoke or anything until after we had broken up. It's not the worst. I mean, it certainly helped me with my self-esteem to have a supportive partner after feeling like I hadn't been so cool in school, and that was all fine. But what it leads to is, I hadn't had those experiences early in college, going to parties, even really had that much experience like trying to get with girls, because I had this period where I was trying to do that, and then I had my girlfriend, and then I stopped doing that. I'm just saying, so like there's a little bit of delayed development at the same time. So we break up at 20, and a few other things happen. start eating meat again, basically just due to social pressure. As of very recently, I can't do it anymore. Started eating meat again, which I guess, can raise your testosterone. I was working out, really, like, years of insecurity finally met actual nutrition and exercise information, so I was, like, kind of getting on top of that, like, more, anyway, so as I was getting more aggressive, also maybe, like, conventionally attractive, and I'm, like, I have this urgent desire to, like, make up for lost time. So I'm, like, essentially going, like, hyper masculine, like, what are all the traits? Like, let me just try all of the things. And of course that leads to a lot of toxic elements. A lot of the people who I found who were, like, embodying what I was seeing as what the role model I wanted with masculinity in terms of confidence or being good with girls or just being able to stay kind of, like, thin and muscular, not all of them are great people. So you kind of have to, like, learn. If you're going to learn, then you have to, like, disentangle what are the actual, like, good, healthy, emotional, healthy parts of this, and what are the parts that are just actually not helping anybody, including yourself. And unfortunately, I wasn't yet an anarchist. I didn't really know about Nietzsche's theories on this at the time, but I basically believed what he kind of talks about with, like, master morality versus slave morality. I was noticing that though I was very interested in trying to learn how to put together, like, a theory of what's going on in the world and be very, like, enterprising, just figuring things out and being independent. And then there's, like, all these other people who are, like, it almost felt like they didn't mind being manipulated if the manipulation was in the service of just, like, they didn't notice that you were kind of an asshole or something. People don't mind that. And that really frustrated me because I feel like a truth seeker. I know that can be pretentious, whatever. So anyway, I'm just explaining why I wasn't just, like, totally averse or see the problematic nature of that. I was trying to figure it out, and I didn't know yet. So as you can imagine, a few more years pass, things kind of level out. And by the way, the answer to the whole thing about the slave morality, some people are going to be leading, some people are following. It can change. You can lead this during this time and then follow during this time. People can trade off. Even if you only do one or the other, your worth as a person is the same. So fucking chill. That's the answer to that, by the way. A final change to my physical appearance that really helped solidify just how I felt was my hair. So same time I broke up with the girl, I finally cut my hair. I got rid of those dang curls that, I kind of miss now that I'm balding. But at the time I was just like, man, I just want to look like a normal boy. And then a few years later too, I just committed to the beard thing, and man, did the beard feel good. Like, I feel like I completely know the feeling that trans people talk about with, like, having some sort of, like, gender affirmation or whatever. It felt good. It goes back to the whole performing gender thing. It's a choice. Sure, I can intrinsically grow a beard without hormone therapy, but I can cut it too. So I'm choosing to perform it because it makes me feel comfortable. And when I was raised arguably a little bit more androgynously, and for good or bad, felt more comfortable being able to perform more masculine than that. And I had to learn how to do that. So that's what we're talking about today. The final piece of my story is, as I suffered at the hands of late capitalism in California, was finally able to discover proper leftist theory, content via some good YouTube video essays, and generally just kind of getting my political thought together. I was able to come back to the feminist theory that I'd only the basic summary of when I was younger and got the tattoo, finally actually deepening my understanding of these sociological trends, and I think settling down a little bit. I can perform masculinity without it being something that hurts other people or makes me a dick or makes me feel insecure. So let's talk about it. I hope I've been able to paint a good picture of how, for me, gender progressed with age, and that as I was able to express more masculinity, I was able to feel better about myself. A lot of my first role models for stronger masculinity also kind of came from assholes, and so I had to disentangle from that. So here's the good. If you're somebody whose traits tend towards the masculine, it's probably going to make you feel good, feel capable and respected, These are important things to try to achieve, especially as our economic system tries ever more to put its boot down on our necks. And of course, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that being able to run my own business now, marry someone of conventional attractiveness, and avoid a lot of the trappings of city life with doing the van in the woods thing don't allow me to feel better about that. I'm not going to pretend those things don't matter. I think it's valid to pursue. If anything, my experience tells me to have a healthy sense of masculinity, to just embrace the things that you like, including the things that you might think are less masculine. Just don't care. The real confidence is being relaxed. Confidence is not like, listen to me. Honestly, too, if I do too much of that, that's when I start to feel my most insecure. When I finished writing this script and I wrote it so confidently, I actually felt bad the whole rest of the evening. And I was like, maybe I was intending to perform too much toxic confidence with this. And to be honest, a lot of the time, I'm just chilling, man. A lot of guys are just chilling a lot of the time. If I'm out in public, I'm not like trying to be the socially dominant one, but I'm confident. I know what I'm up to. I have like things I'm intending to do. I can keep my body language relaxed. I'm on the lookout for like ways to help people. And if you come to talk to me, I'm going to have a good conversation with you. That's confidence. And a lot of what gives me that confidence is that I've continued to learn. I love skills. I never knew how to work on a car. Now I know how to work on my car. I guess that's a stereotypical guy thing, right? It feels great to feel like you can work on your car. Political theory, music production, economics, physics, running business, client communication. I mean, I love learning all these different skills, and the better I get at them, the more just like relaxed I am. And this relates specifically to trying to be entrepreneurial. You know, when you first are trying to like make money for something and like try to make anything work, and something happens after you've like actually done it for a while, you only want to do the good gigs. You only want to do the ones with the clients who are actually nice to work with, projects that are satisfying, the budget is actually comfortable and not super stressed. Because I've had those bad experiences. And now I can just be like, this is what I can do. And all of this really let me adopt one very simple attitude, which I think is kind of at the core of a way to be non-toxic. Do what you can to try to help people or situations. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Create win-win situations for people. If you think somebody needs some information, tell them. If you think they need to be whatever, but don't be attached to the result. Do what you can, and don't attach yourself to the result. I basically say this in my K2 video about the music thing in and of itself. Just do it if you want to do it, and then don't attach yourself to the end result. Now, I suppose this goes hand in hand with another thing. I said the one rule, but I think this is a maybe even a more important singular rule. Avoid the bad ego. So eventually I recognized there were kind of two versions of me. It's not like a morality good or bad per se. It's just like, that's when I don't like if I yelled at someone, got into an argument. That's just when I don't feel good about stuff where I thought I was better than other people. And so I try to do a good job of identifying when I'm feeling that come up. Like if I started feeling like, oh man, my wife, she can never, or if I'm feeling like, oh, these people around me can't, I'm like, whoa, dude, you're not going to feel, I promise you're not going to keep feeling this in a bit. Like once the whatever has subsided, this isn't really how you feel. Don't embrace that. It's not you, but it can feel like you if you get swept up in the moment. And feelings of superiority, they lead to one of the worst emotions that you can feel against other human beings, and that's contempt. And that's really what we're trying to avoid with this whole not wanting masculinity to be toxic thing. There is truth to individual responsibility. Every single person is going to be the one who cares about themselves the most, their own dreams and needs, and should be responsible for those things first and foremost. We leftists, we advocate for a world where the living conditions, the material conditions for people, when we leftists advocate better living conditions, better material conditions for people, we're not doing it to mollycoddle people or because like they can't take care of themselves, so fuck them. Wait, we're kind of the opposite of that, right? No, we're doing it because systems matter. And if you have an environment it really does just come down to your own ability to like motivate yourself, get your your stuff figured out so that you have excitement, that you have a valid social life where you feel appreciated, where you're doing all this stuff, where that's actually just something that you can like individually responsible your way to not have such barriers where you just have to individual responsible yourself to like not falling back too fast. I mean, that's messed up, bro. You know, that's not cool. That's not at that point, it's not even individual responsibility because you're collectively getting fucked over. So how's it your individual responsibility? And the other thing too is that if there are arbitrary social limits set by just like low wages or like there's no available third spaces for people to pay, that's what leads to the very frustration, anger, resentment, and self-hatred that creates the toxic attitudes in the first place. So here's kind of my hit list of advice to young men who are looking for advice, who've made it this far in the video. You know, a tall and muscular but otherwise soy boy cucked motherfucker. If you've made it this far in the video and you're interested to hear what I have to say on masculinity, here's my top tips. Here's the meat of it. Going to the gym is not enough. Okay? You need it matters what you put into your body. Remember the bad ego I was talking about? That happens when you have not taken proper care of yourself. You've not eaten enough. That's the whole reason that people are like anti-carbs, because carbs will not really make you feel full if you're not getting enough protein. And it is like that with anything else. Like, if your body knows it's not getting enough vitamins, and then it'll just tell you, you do more. And you won't even know what that is. Do some research, take some supplements. You can even, at psychiatric health or doctor treatment, they can do a blood test, and they can actually tell you, like, they actually know now, it's DNA testing, and they can tell you, like, oh, you're actually going to be able to not respond if you take this. You need the B complex because your body can't metabolize it. You can think you're taking a certain vitamin and it's not even doing anything. So, you know, check up with a doctor. It's not that unmanly to go and say like, hey, I think I got maybe this thing and I want to ask your expert opinion. Oh, sure. Oh, yes, that's what you would say with your years of experience. Ah, I see. So let me implement that into my life. Well, I do have a concern here. Maybe you can answer. Is that unmanly? If you have a head, it doesn't mean you have a mental illness. And it can be good, but it's your responsibility. And it's other people's problems if you're not. One thing that's really helped me, and I have like a late diagnosis, ADHD, but regardless, a very sort of broadly helpful thing is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And what's brilliant is you don't even really need a therapist for it, although if you do need a therapist, generally, you know, you can do it in therapy. But cognitive behavioral therapy, it's basically, by that example I gave earlier about recognizing the bad ego, to your behavior, basically slowing down in the moment, instead of just, you're taking constant pause to be able to reflect. Instead of just being stressed in a situation and then acting out of anger because you're stressed, in a vacuum is actually understandable and totally fine. Well, if you recognize like, oh, like, this is the end of a whatever, you know, super long week, and I haven't like eaten yet, and I'm feeling stressed about the relatives coming, so of course I'm feeling this way. I need to be able to like lower my expectations for myself for this period of time to try to this point that's better. That's like a more healthy way of approaching, you know, when you feel stuck. If you identify a lot of problems in your life and then just feel mopey about it, that's one thing. But if that's not going to help. But if you are able to just recognize what's going on based on that, little baby steps to just slowly improve it. But it starts by being able to kind of pause in the moment, take stock of things, try to figure out what are all the factors going on, what are all the things that are making your body feel the way it is, and just, again, what I needed was a rule. I hate rules, but what I needed was to just always know if I'm feeling that contempt, whatever, feeling in the moment with someone, I now know if I'm feeling that, this isn't justified. In the past, I wouldn't know. Sometimes in the past, I would be like, man, I don't want to leave this feeling like I should have said that. And that's basically why I would like get in arguments with people and yell at people. No, it takes so much more time to recover from an incident like that emotionally than it's ever worth. And so just remembering that. Now, you need goals. This is true. The world does not stop turning. And in 30 years' time, even if you live in a city that has the same name in the same ostensible location, you are galaxies different from where you were 30 years ago. It's not just money that experiences inflation. There's all sorts of inflation. There's inflation of value. There's inflation of expectations of basic knowledge. Even if you're employed, you are your own business. And especially if you're self-employed, you're your own business. And it's your job to stay competitive with the future and to match those various inflations, learning new things. Don't get into a rut. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Make sure you're doing it every day. Even things that you're not already good at. It's okay. You're going to get better. So be humble about that in that way. It doesn't have to be like a submissive thing. It can just be like, wow, I'm excited to learn about this, and I don't know a lot. Factually, I don't know a lot about this, and I'm excited to learn about it. It doesn't have to be that much of a crazy thing. We don't have to twist ourselves into being able to prove egotistically that we already know everything that we don't. No one can grunt it alone. But don't just be doing it by hanging out with the same people who are just drinking all the time. I'm not here to tell you how not to enjoy your time. Alcohol is particularly bad for your growth. It's not something that you're going to be able to really do while you're doing, and then it has just this insane recovery period, and it's so bad for your health and your mental health. It basically should be classified as a hard drug in terms of its actual effects and its addiction level and wow, I didn't expect to rant about alcohol this much. You need to be able to be social with people and get that feedback and get that feeling. The reason why there's so much social anxiety from feelings of rejection or feeling alone is that humans cannot survive alone. We need societies. That's how our ancestors developed. It just is a fact of the matter. So when you get rejected or you feel alone, maybe less so in our modern world, but that's why it feels so extreme. So it's important. Have a society. I mean, I live out in the woods, but I do the online stuff constantly because otherwise I would go insane. Now, I don't think women are as complicated as it may be made out to believe, and you might already be able to see why. If gender is a social construct that varies and blah, 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 all the same people, yeah, women are just people, man. And think about your own experiences growing up, and who you want to hang out with, and you probably like hanging out with people with similar interests, who are easy to talk to, who don't make you feel like shit, exciting, maybe cool. That's it. If assuming that we're talking about straight women, they're going to be attracted romantically to male presenting people primarily, and otherwise it's kind of the same factor. I mean, the old patriarchal notion that a woman's success primarily is going to come from who she marries, is still true to an extent, especially where any sort of reputational high social value is concerned. So by their very nature, wealthy social environments are more conservative. Maybe that's a no duh. But that kind of brings me to something that I want to call out the incel community for, which is all of the toxic incel women or this, women or that, women or whatever. They're the same group of people who call what was her name? Barbie movie 7. They rage because they know they can't have sex with her, so they're just angry and they want to punish her. But think for a second. If your definition of a woman who you date is an unusually attractive, I kind of cringe at this term, but it is kind of useful, model class woman, are you a model class guy? That's the whole Andrew Tate thing that he's trying to just say, and there is some truth to it. But the simpler truth is, if you're taking care of your health, if you're learning new things, if you're competent and you're securing yourself enough to make the environment that you're in better around you, that's high social value. The toxic, you never know when I'm going to beat you. Come on, that's not. And the only reason why that even is because of people in insecure situations, financial dependency on the guy, things that happen under extreme, and a lot of it's getting better and a lot of it still exists. And man, if there's one thing that I think can help us empathize with what the difference in the experience of women might be, I think it's the one that I've learned that like most girls have had when they go through puberty, and then all of a sudden, all the older male relatives or mentor figures, it changes. It changes forever because they're all trying not to be like, they're trying not to have any sort of like attraction around this person. You know, I'm sure that can be very isolating. I feel like I've been fortunate since my 20s to be with what I would consider very attractive women. And one thing that I learned from finally like being close to people who like had the kind of looks and social value that I wanted as when I was young, I was like, oh, I want the validation or whatever. Pretty guy, I guess in my case, but like it's not great. You know, like if you're a really attractive woman, everyone's trying to control you because if they can, then that makes them feel better. And when like everyone is either kind of in competition with you, like a female or like a male who's like just trying to come at you, and when there's so many people coming at you that like even though there's people not, it's like no way to properly have trust. You know, that's the situation. Shit, I was one of those guys who was trying to get the things and control them. Okay, so now I've kind of learned how to just chill the fuck out. So how do you marry, no pun intended, the fact that women want a guy who's going to be kind of similar interest to them and comfortable with their masculinity, the sort of experience that a lot of people have where it seems like women are attracted to what we as men would call assholes or whatever. How do you marry those two things together? Well, you just have to realize that the world is kind of a cesspool. And I think that for a lot of women, who their partner is really does impact their life, like, or at least it can feel like that. And they're very, they're aware of effects of being with someone, the influence, and maybe even the effects of monogamy. Like you're with one person at the expense of not being with others. With that in mind, yeah, maybe you have to stand out a bit. Maybe it helps if you're able to be confident in social situations. It's not going to help if you're like doing the fake confident thing that's actually insecure. It's going to help if you're doing the real confident thing that is actually just attractive. See the above section for more on that. At the end of the day, women want somebody who is like somebody who can live a stable life with them, you know, whatever, be some sort of contributor. A lot of women nowadays are the financial breadwinners, but, you know, they're going to want a partner who they feel like is contributing to the shared vision of the relationship. Even if the traditional roles are switched, they want somebody who's going to be able to be in it with them together and share the responsibility and actually enjoy that time together. It just starts, I think, by being interested in things and following through on that. Then you'll meet people and you'll be in a situation, you'll find somebody who you actually, at the end of the day, if the spectrum of gender and sexuality teaches us anything, it's that while performing masculinity to the people who are attracted to men, embracing the toxic aspects are just going to harm and hinder, especially if your goal is a long-term romantic partner. You're actually like, and that ends the section where a bearded dude talks about what women want. Please add to it, women, in the comments. I know that I am not speaking for your experience exactly. It's just sort of a thought experiment. Anyway, moving on to summarize this whole conversation that we've had. Masculinity is a little bit of a tricky subject. On the one hand, it kind of just boils down to how much testosterone you have, but at the same time, it obviously can't just be that, because otherwise how would trans men... So it's a very murky concept. It's difficult to pin down. Also, can we just take a second to appreciate the struggle? I felt depressed not being able to fully actualize my masculinity. Boy, nobody had a problem when I wanted to lift weights or grow a beard or anything. And it still was like a journey, man. I can only imagine how much harder it would be if I were hindered by society constantly telling me that I'm not what I am. Jeez. I mean, I think most normal people are catching on to this, thank God. But, there's still a lot of political hurdles for trans people and their allies. So Anyway, going back to masculinity, I'm looking at my notes again to make sure that I can sum it up correctly. It can feel like masculinity is almost more of a list of traits than a singular description, but that is okay. It is a social construct. And the list of traits will change from culture to culture, from time to time, and that's normal. While we can think of gender as being a spectrum, I think it's reductive to try to pinpoint how many male versus female points you have. Maybe I like a lot of things that are traditionally masculine. Maybe I also like some things that are like really feminine and not that much in between. It's a lot more of a hodgepodge. It's a spectrum, but it's like a 5-dimensional spectrum. Another example I like to give is, I am aware of the privilege of being in a hetero couple as I live in more rural areas, even though on the coast it's a lot more progressive. While if you were like a reactionary shitlord who's trying to say, look at how they're proof that, look how good this like straight relationship can be for people, huh? That would be totally ridiculous because we just happen to be straight and to be the demographics that we are. If you were the same person who's like, oh, you have to be super conservative in your straight relationship, you'd probably also think it's super important to be like religious and have kids. And we're not those things. Again, it's about fitting together what you actually like and not feeling like there is a hierarchy, broadly speaking, just that there's like a personal, and that recognizing it for yourself while also recognizing that it differs for other people is the non-toxic attitude. Always be improving yourself. And take it at a pace you can handle. One of the best things that I've learned trying to set out on my own to be successful entrepreneur is that if I burn out, so I have to go at a pace that I can keep up, I will work till I die. A little different than if you're in like a cubicle or a law firm or something for that whole time. You act like a guy. You're an example of what a guy likes or does or whatever. Try to recognize what you actually do like and just be comfortable in it. And that's the confidence. Don't assume that if you like the normal thing that everyone should, and use the ways that you differ from the normal experience as your source of empathy for others who might differ in more extreme ways or in ways you didn't realize were just different ways. Right? Keep an open mind about that. I hope this video has been helpful for you to be able to separate and disentangle the good from the bad with masculinity. I hope through all my rambling and my story that I was able to present to you some of the complexities that underlie. Maybe some of just the basics of the feminist theory that really is not so extreme or radical. It's very common sense. But either way, I hope you got something out of it, and I wish you the best of luck in what you do. I appreciate your time on this video. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Before I forget, let me know if you have comments that I didn't discuss, because I will try to get to that. And Leopard out!